One thing you'll learn about me here in the next little while is I love cheap Chinese merchandise. But forget about that. We gotta get on to this thing. This is actually the front hub and disc assembly from a late 60s, early 70s Datsun 510. It happens to fit on the spindle. Uses the same bearings, the same seals as the Chevette, but the spindle comes in a couple pounds lighter, and the brake disc is about a half an inch shorter all the way around, and provides that little bit less front brake that we're looking for on the dirt track. We're not allowed to run brake bias in our class, so we got to try and find a different way around getting a little bit more rear brake. You'll notice that it's been drilled out. I did that myself on the drill press. I don't recommend doing that on your street car for this reason. You can see that I've had one break just this season. But on a racetrack, you're in a bit of a controlled environment. You can get away with stuff you probably wouldn't do on the street, knowing that you're in there pretty safe, as well as the drivers around you. The upper control arms I made the plate to accept GM metric or G-body upper ball joint. It's adjustable. It's the All-Star adjustable. It's got the little spacers in there so you can adjust your roll center as needed. I've also got slots in here to adjust the camber. Not the most ideal way of doing it. I would have preferred to have been able to use Heim joints here and be able to move them in and out that way. But with our rules, we're not allowed to have adjustable length in the control arms. The springs are springs that were sitting on the shelf at Scotty's. Don't know where they're from, don't know what they're from, but we cut them down to get the weight that we want. Again, maybe not something you want to do on a street car, but on a race car. We hear lots of guys kind of down top cutting springs, and there's all kinds of, what do you call it, not rumors, but there's all kinds of opinions out there that cutting springs changes the rebound and makes them bouncier and this and that. Basically what it does is it stiffens the spring as you cut coils off. Scotty's got a spring tester, and at Pop's Chops, and for $5 a spring you go in there and you can check the weight of your spring. You can cut off a coil, you can recheck the weight of your spring, and you cut it down to where you want it. We got this lower ball joint is actually, as you can see, it's a little bunged up down there too. Is a thread-in type Chrysler lower ball joint. Welded that in, bigger, stronger. I've had the stock ball joints break, and the stock ball joints are a press-in type ball joint. Anybody that's working on ball joints knows how nightmare that can be. So these are the thread-in ones. They work really well. With the problems I was having this year, I ended up buying a reamer just to clean out the spindle a little bit, and that seems to have solved ball joint problems. Otherwise, it's a stock lower control arm untouched. Other than the shock mount's been relocated in the stock setup. The shock mount actually mounts on the upper control arm. We got our weight jack in there, and that's really all there is. So the front end in this thing's pretty easy to come out. I'm just going to disconnect the shocks, the sway bar, the steering column, undo about 6 bolts, I think it is, and the whole assembly will come out, and we can work on it on the bench. Well, that wasn't as easy as I was expecting it to be. I wasn't planning on beating it with a hammer or a sledgehammer, but that's what it took to get it out. Probably would have been easier to take it out one piece at a time. But anyways, here it is. The whole assembly on the bench. There's the piece of the lower control arm for the broken lower control arm, so I'm gonna have to replace that. That thing's toast. Looking at this upper control arm, it's definitely tweaked, so that's gonna need some work. And then I got a whole nother cross member that I'm gonna stick on the car, and then I think we'll chop it maybe somewhere around here. We'll actually weld this section right to the chassis. We're gonna revise the motor mounts and start putting it back together. Gonna need a new one of those. Gonna have to replace that. So I got back into the shop. I've taken all the bits and pieces off of the original Crossmember that was in the car. I also had pulled a spare one out of a parts car previously. It's pretty rusty, it's pretty dirty. We're gonna have to clean it up. We've got a lot of modifications to make. You can see all the different modifications that we've made to the original Crossmember to make it race worthy, I guess you'd call it. Most notably different is probably the spring perches. As you can see, the stock one has quite a bit of meat on it. It's got the bump stop. We removed all that when we built the new one for the car. We also welded in the nut for the weight jack. What you might not notice, I don't know if you can tell, but over the life of the car so far, this has slowly been working itself up over time, where this one stays relatively flat. The reason we ended up gutting all this was because we didn't think the big springs would fit. I didn't have the big springs when we were making these modifications. Now that we got the big springs, I can stick it in here and see quite easily that it fits without having to gut all that meat. So I'll probably leave a lot of that on when I do it this time. You'll notice there's the bolt for the upper control arm seized in there, so I'm just going to cut this right off, run a new tube. Same problem here. These motor mounts are usually impossible to take off, so I'm just going to cut them off. And then I think we'll cut this here, we'll cut this here. I'm going to have to make the notch for the oil pan similar to this one here, and then get it back in the car. Well, that might be as far as I'm getting today. This little one here is supposed to be sleeping, but as you can clearly see, she is not. So I think I'm gonna have to go in the house and try and get her back to sleep, or find a way to entertain her for the rest of the day. Anyways, I'm out of batteries for the welder as well. Not the welder, my welding mask. So I guess it is what it is. That's part of trying to raise 3 rugrats and have a race car at the same time. So I guess next time we might start cutting and welding some stuff. Let's hope so. Thanks for watching.